Welcome to the Coming Home Well podcast, the show that educates, supports, and advocates for the veteran community. Your host, Dr. Tyler Piron, U.S. Army retired, will bring you exciting conversations with amazing guests about resources, research, and military history, all geared to helping our warriors to come home well. Here's your host, Dr. Tyler Piron.
Welcome back to Coming Home Well, and we have a great show for you. We have veteranrites.org and Ryan Mielcarek. He's going to come on and tell us all about the organization. It's called Veteran Rites, not veterans' rights as in like the rights and privileges, but rights as in like practices. So they have a pretty darn cool organization. He's calling from the Pacific Northwest, so I'm sure it's wet and rainy there. We were just talking about how it all throughout the winter it gets kind of that super heavy fog that doesn't really get you wet, except if you're outside for a bit of time. So thank you so much for joining us on the show, Ryan.
Oh, absolute gratitude to you and what you do and your mission. And we just actually got the rain. So, being a veteran, I feel good in the suck. So we're in a good place to get started.
So according to that logic, if it's not raining, it's not training. Yeah, I heard that a lot. I never really bought it though. I didn't put it in my soul, but some people just love being outside in the rain. So Ryan, you were serving in the military. Let's just as a background, what were you doing in the military?
Well, like a lot of our people, we're usually running from something or running towards something. And I'd left, I'd say, college early. I went to Marquette University. I went to go study acting. I didn't plan to do a military thing. I thought I was Brad Pitt. I ended up being Brad Smith. It happens. And, I actually was looking at the time right after 9/11. I don't know, the logic at the time was I really want to understand and be action and be part of the solution. So, but it was an adventure. So I signed up with the United States Seabees Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 74, had the opportunity to be in the initial push, the invasion up into Iraq, and then went back to Fallujah, to Ramadi, and some combat outposts on the Saudi Arabian border, and had an added enlistment bonus being stationed at Gulfport, Mississippi for the time that I was there when I wasn't on deployment of losing my house in Hurricane Katrina. So it was a jam-packed time. And I'm grateful for it, but my time after has really been the real reward.
That's pretty amazing. I was in a lot of the same areas out there in Abu Ghraib and Fallujah during the 2003, 2004 timeframe. So we might have passed each other at some point or another.
Aye.
That's amazing how even decades later, there's these points in time where people are often brought together. That's a great thing about the military. And so let's talk a little bit about your organization and then how you got involved with it, got it started with Veteran Rites, and that's RITES as opposed to Right or Wrong or any of the others, .org. It's a great organization. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting it right off the bat. So it's the ritual, the ceremony, as those that stepped across the line, raised their right hand, were indoctrinated, rewired to fulfill missions out into society. That was a transformation, and that was a rite of passage into a new way of being, a new community, a new value and belief system. And we all know that the extent of the human condition and the extremities of all that we face in battle and at the home front requires, I would say, a boot camp back to your humanity, and that is the missing link. And so what we say, this is a rite of passage to really coming back for the veteran soul. We call it like a field hospital for the veteran soul, to really come in and answer the question, who am I? What's my purpose? And where do I belong? The real deep questions that all humans ask. And it requires a ceremony. It requires ritual. It requires community. So we do that. And it's all about just welcoming our people home with love and honor. We really believe that if we started there, if we started at the place that indigenous communities already understood, and if we trace all of our ancestry, understood that the warrior coming back from battle absolutely requires a cleanse, a detox, hearing their story fully heard so they can go back and serve their community again. Because we know that our veterans have deep experience, training, gifts that the world needs. needs. And we really believe, there's a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh, it's related to the fact that if veterans can do this, if veterans can come back in and walk a final path of peace and do all of that internal work to go back, then we as a society can do it as well. So we provide ceremonies out in the wilderness of Pacific Northwest. They're 12 days. They include 4 days of fasting. We really believe in this equation of coming back to community, being surrounded, but also that really honoring your solitude. And we really honor that you have the answer inside of you. We ask the same question: why are you here? And we really just are midwives and guides to the process of their own rebirthing back into who they really are, with barefoot on ground back on American soil. And we exist to prevent more casualties of war on American soil as a result of suicide. So along with the ceremonies, if you've been initiated, and it is an initiation, the true identity, purpose, and belonging, that needs to be supported out in community. So on the community side of the house, we really lean into the practice of counsel, of really speaking from the heart, listening from the heart, and convening circles, often veteran-led mostly, where we can just provide a welcoming space and be really real, and a place that really honors all of who we are, going back all the way to the childhood stuff, to the service stuff, to the identity stuff, all of our intersectionality, and the wholeness. And that's essentially the baseline of what we do. Start with the welcome home, and we're really about the healing of the veteran soul.
Well, that makes me a little nervous that we didn't have Coming Home Well already in hand when you guys got started, because that's what it sounds like. The primary mission is making sure that veterans are able to come home well. You obviously approach it in a different manner than we do, with the rites and the ceremonies and the almost adventure. I'm sure there's some adventure part of that as well. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned fasting for 4 days. Is that 4 days in a row, or is that 4 days throughout the 12-day period?
It's 4 days in a row. The first, and I also just want to honor that anytime we have intention set, a ceremony has a clear beginning, a middle, and an end. And actually, I could go into the history of this particular ceremony and all ceremonies. And so when you set an intention and you're doing what you're doing, that is a ceremony. So thank you for your work, providing the reverence that it takes to bring our people back, and really, after service, we're often just asking that question, who are my people? Automatically, I'm severed from that community and that tight bond. And that is a long journey home. So the first 4 days, you can imagine, to prepare for this thing, it's like a mythological journey, right? So this isn't different than Odysseus and all the archetypes out there. To really just get acclimated to the land, we really lean into nature, as a teacher, but also just a way to ground. And you can imagine, with all that our people bring out, it takes a couple of days. So those first couple of days, we gather in circle, and we really just listen to each other's story. That's just the biggest thing in the world. And, witnessing is what it's all about. So we hold that, and we ask who you are, who you are at your deepest core, your I am. And then you take that out in preparation. We prep you for the land. And we've had all the, I wouldn't say all, but a lot, whatever our people carry, whether they're diabetic, they're amputees, whatever the barrier is, we will create a ceremony and environment that is safe for you to go out and do what you need to do. And so you get blessed out, and in that preparation, you spend 4 days and nights, 4 days of nights, deep solitude, being bored, probably being a little angry, but really stopping the hamster wheel of life and really stopping the mind. And something magical happens around those 3 or 4 days. And there's a lot of physiological, biological effects of fasting, as well as a cleansing mechanism coming back, and from medical and spiritual benefits. And we really lean into this practice of self-generated ceremony, saying that you don't need to be blessed by anything. You are naturally blessed. And you yourself can foster a beautiful relationship with the land of where you're at, and self-generate incredible stories and rituals of healing, whether that's having conversations with those you've lost, whether that's making amends, forgiving, being forgiven, claiming your power, having a spa day, doing self-care, writing that business plan you actually could never take the time to do. So what we found is that during that time, because we don't prescribe anything, we really lean into the power of what's inside. The stories that come back are incredible. And the transformation that is seen after those 4 days is palpable. And they come back and the changes in the eyes are unmistakable. They've really like died a spiritual death, and come back. And then we hold that story. We hold that rite of initiation back into community. And it's all things veteran, right? It's playful, it has a lot of grief, it has a lot of sorrow, it's a lot of service, and some dark humor. All the things that we are, the wholeness of that, right? And then you are initiated back into community as it should have been. And the breakthroughs that happen out there, because it's not a therapeutic kind of environment, often those breakthroughs lead to veterans either seeking the kind of therapies that they were unable or did not want to access before, but also step into their power and their gifts so they could go out and serve again. It's a beautiful experience.
Sounds like a magical experience. So how many people are involved and how does this go? Like, say, hey, I'm going to go do the rites with you, go out for 12 days. Sort of walk me through that process of doing the rites and going on the spiritual journey.
Thank you for that question. It comes in all sorts of different ways. We'll put out a call for the ceremonies for next year, but pretty soon here. And usually you need a few months preparation. That's really helpful to really close up shop so you can really sever. That's the whole point of, the rite of passage. You look at classical rite of passage, you think about, the young adolescents being taken out of the village. You have to be taken out. That's the deal, into a new experience, in a new environment. So to prep for that, though, physically, psychologically, it starts with a conversation. That's what we're all about, man. It's holding each other's story and being really real about it. This is and taking off the masks. Like, it's okay, and to normalize it all. So it usually starts with a conversation of who are you? Just like that. And then we foster that over a period of time and in preparation. And as you close up shop and you do the checklist and all those kind of things, we remove. One thing I'm really proud of is that we remove as many barriers as we can. I mean, we've found dog sitters, flights, hotels. It's about the whole experience of providing the people, getting the people the experience that they all deserve. So we work on all that end just to get people to the land. That's a ceremony in itself. And all those things, the bubbling up, in Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, there's the call, right? We're all answering this very deep call within ourselves. But then there's the refusal. So a few weeks before, I usually get the call that it's like, hey, I'm not going to do this. I go, okay, are you sure about that? Excellent. And then they come back and they're like, no, I'm going to do this because I'm ready. Because it's usually at the point of people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And they're like, this is it. I'm really going to cross the line and be who I'm truly called to be. I'm going to honor all the experience, training, the spirit of service. And then what no longer serves, I'm going to lay down on the land.
So you have 12 folks, and you mentioned getting ready for next year's election process. What is the criteria to participate in veterans' rights?
We had a standard operating procedure for everything, right? Like what lug nut to put on a wrench, how to go to the bathroom, everything from running patrols to all the comms equipment, to how to walk, how to talk, how to breathe, how to do ceremony in a beautiful way. So like that's, going back to the rites, it is in our blood. We are creatures of ritual. And we have found that actually when you lose your rituals out of service, when also you don't have those things of knowing who you really are, who your people are, and what your real transcendent purpose is in life now, then we lose people. So selection process is interesting. We really believe in the call. We put the call out and we spread it wide. And those that answer and end up in that ceremony are those who are always supposed to be there. So generally a ceremony is 6 to 8 veterans welcomed home by a guide team of civilians and veterans and witnesses as the community welcoming you back for this experience. Because it takes, you can imagine, a whole community to hold the depth of the stories that our people carry inside of them. That's my charge. That's my prayer. That no longer are we where you hear the story of like, well, I never really talked about her service, or she never, told her story. Like, now is the time. Like we can really end that legacy of not really holding all of our people and shoveling it down inside and letting it eat them up. We as a community are responsible, and we have the privilege to bear the pain and the joy and the wildness of our people that have gone and made the ultimate sacrifice.
What is the criteria? Is it veterans? Is it men? Is it women? Is it combat wounded?
We're really trying to do a very interesting thing. A lot of think of veterans programs are broken up into men, women, subpopulations. And we really believe that if we just get into the circle and get into the heart of our experience and the heart of ourselves, the magic happens. So it is open to men, women, non-binary, all of our people that served, right? And survivors of veteran suicide, and Gold Star mothers, and on, and even providers, even our service providers that go in on the front lines every day, the case managers, the VSOs, all of them, every day, doctors, whoever it is, to come in and cleanse, because you are a part of our community. You are a part of our collective body. Yeah. And we've had spouses and partners. We're trying to really heal the wholeness. We're into wholeness of the community. So, but generally it's mostly those that have served. But if people are called to have this experience and be welcome home back into this community and they feel that they are, then let's chat. There's a reason for that. It needs to be heard.
So, Ryan, that's a great answer. I was just making sure, because sometimes there are programs that are specific for a certain military era, or women or men, or any sort of differentiation. So that's why I asked. Now, it sounds like it's open to everybody that is served or assisting the serving or served, which is a much broader basket of folks, which is really important because there's a lot of trauma there. It's 12 weeks. How do people get out there? Where is it? If someone was listening today and said, this sounds exactly what I need, A, how do they get in touch with you? But B, where do they need to go? What's that all about?
Sure. Yeah, we're all about, this is a contact sport, man. So starts with the phone call, and the best place is really always to go to the website, veteranrites.org, and on the contact page, my email's there, counsel@veteranrites.org, and probably my phone number. It's really personal. So it isn't, we really don't want to be like, you have to put in an application, right? So we have a conversation and we see what works for you, and we start from there. So we'll announce the ceremonies and the dates, but generally there will be one in the spring and 3 or 4 within the summer and early fall months. And then we also have mirroring workshops. So we actually practice the art of mirroring and holding stories as an imperative skill and empowerment exercise, not just for veterans, but for all of humans. They're really great for relationships too. Doing that and really leaning into the practice of counsel as a practice of how we can convene these spaces that can hold the depth and the enormity of these experiences in a beautiful way to make sure that everybody's story is actually really whole and that they're welcomed home to a community where they're loved and honored.
I love that entire concept. That's something that we hold very dear. Our Coming Home Well, I almost say that you guys are almost a sister organization because you have the same ultimate goal to help veterans come home well in a loving, supportive environment. And you mentioned a few things that I find super important, and we talk about them a lot on this show and some of the other shows here on the Coming Home Network affiliates. But it's finding your tribe and finding your purpose. And that sounds like pretty easy, but as anybody who's been an adult that is outside the military, they've moved into a new place, finding a new tribe can be exceedingly difficult if you don't have that commonality of, someone you go to college with or served in the military or serving in the military, where you have that automatic connections with other people. And that's often a significant stressor, especially for veterans that are having some PTS issues or they've sexual assault or any of these other things that comorbidities with serving. But then also finding your purpose, where you're trying to figure out what the heck am I going to do in life? And that's so much more than a job, though a job can help with that. How does your program help with those two specific things, finding your purpose and finding your tribe?
Okay. Good question. So I say that the ceremony, when I was invited out by a beautiful man named Mark Orofsky, deeply held the ceremony by Larry Hobbs, to bring the ceremony to veterans, it's where I cross the line from being a human doing to being a human being, right? So, you know, I'd say for the first 10 or 12 years after, I came back from Iraq, I was still very much on mission, which is good. These things keep you alive. I found purpose in putting all the veteran t-shirts, continually giving of myself in different kinds of ways, trying to be a support. And I didn't realize until I got out to ceremony that actually I just didn't feel worthy of having survived. And that the shadow side of it all, even though I had the great LinkedIn account, I was Mr. Veterans, of the county and doing all these beautiful things, that there was a deep hole in my soul inside that I was really hadn't faced some of the things that I needed to face in order to feel clean, and then also to feel worthy, and that I actually belonged here on this earth. And that takes a process. It takes a community. And so it is a very intentional sequence of steps to where in those 4 days, and this is some methodological stuff, there isn't a religious tradition or any other sort of wisdom tradition where you don't spend a time alone in the wilderness. So to really sit with it, and that's where you get to it, the kind of purpose where it's not defined on your rank, it's not defined on the people serving under you, and it's not defined by anyone else but your own internal heart. What matters most to you of your value system and beliefs? We have a lot of people with a lot of plans and how they're going to save the world, and they might come back out and be like, you know what, my transcendent purpose is to be a father that shows up. My transcendent purpose, is to be wild and free. My transcendent purpose now is completely unrelated to my MOS. Your transcendent purpose is your calling. And we say that all you're doing is claiming what is already true, but it takes time to work, that quote by Joseph Campbell as well. It's just, it says like, the dragon is guarding your greatest treasure, right? If you can approach those things as a real natural thing to do instead of like this fear-based, I have to get through something, and it's part of a real mythological human experience journey, it really just decompresses a lot of the stress around these things and being like, hey man, like this is all normal. A lot of our reactions, after service are impressions upon our amygdala, rupturing our conception of time, our cognition, and all these other kind of things. But that's not abnormal. That's what we were trained to do. But to slow that down, to come out of that hamster wheel, requires laying on our back on the ground and slowing down. I'd say the biggest part of the ceremony, the hardest part for most people, is to be bored.
Yeah, that's a good observation. Like anytime you see people like even just waiting something for a couple minutes, boom, out come the cell phones.
That's exactly right. You're not going to change a system with the same amount of there's 8,000 some veteran nonprofits, right? We have billions of dollars into the healthcare system. And I'm not the kind of person that, all systems are going to be challenged, but we all know that the systems are not going to be changed unless the people that work and create and maintain the systems are healed and initiated and whole. And so we're just saying, let's just start there. Let's start there. And also include that there's a mystery involved here. We're not going to define it. We're not going to prescribe it, but there is a greater mystery and transcendence around us. And if that's nature for you, which most people agree upon, that, there is some medicine there, and that nature is always like the greatest mirror around. I mean, I take nature as a prescription now, that's the big change. And that we connect, one of the tools you pick up out in ceremony is taking questions to the land, questions in my relationships, questions about jobs, about my children, about myself. And always, without a doubt, you can go out there and the trees and the ground and the environment and the sky are mirroring and telling you stories back to you. So it's just a beautiful way to live. And also, when you claim your belonging in nature, you're never alone because she's everywhere, even though how much we try to cover her up.
So you mentioned that people go out and they spend time alone out in the wilderness, but they also go out in groups. So are you like by yourself for a period of time, or you're with a small group and that's the isolation? So,
can we reframe that terminology instead of isolation? because it's
Yeah.
solitude, right? Yeah, yeah. So it does matter that those words matter, right?
Words matter.
Because we're trying to
Absolutely.
actually words matter, and it isn't like these are just the little things. So I'd say like the answer is both and we're alone together. So we come out. You're coming out as a team, like a wild motley crew, very diverse group of veterans from different service areas, culture, identity, experience, right? And you're stepping across the line into this really cool experience. So it's your own personal journey, but you are held in it by community. And for 4 of those days, you are out there and, you'll find your place where you really want to heal and a place of wisdom and a place of teaching, knowing that your people are also out at the same time as well. And there are communication structures to where you're in communication should there be any safety or anything like that. So you're alone, but you're together. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining what somebody who's listening going, what the heck are they doing out there? Just like, hey, dump you out in the woods. Okay, see you in 4 days, and then we'll do some stuff. Obviously, it's not like that. So I want that visual picture of, sort of that trepidation that somebody might be feeling. They're like, this sounds wonderful. It sounds exactly what I need.
I like it.
And people are, in a tough spot. They're, like you said, often headed towards that crash or some incident or some bad outcome. And I'm like, well, let's see. I can go out in the woods by myself, but that's probably not the healthiest. Going for a hike with some friends, or there's also other, outside activities. So I just want to get a good visual picture of that. Yeah. You mentioned a lot about 4 days of fasting. And what's the purpose? What's the goal? Yeah. What's the outcome of that?
Well, can I walk you through the process?
Sure, absolutely.
You told me to take you a walk. What's that look like? You get a call. We have an experience where we really get to know each other, and build a trust and a bond and answer any kind of questions that may arise for you. And they're always different and some are the same. And we begin the journey together. And whether you drive out or we pick you up at the airport and take care of you, then, you're with people, you're with your community, you're with veterans, right? And we bring you out to the land. And the first 4 days is like camping. You have a little 2-person tent and we gather in circle for the first 4 days. And we spend a lot of time and we give you a lot of time to take individual walks as well. But it's that ceremonial container of severing from what was before, crossing the threshold into the 4 days of fasting, and then coming back home to a welcoming that. But the first 4 days is like camping, and it's fun. You have a communal kitchen, all these kind of things, all the things that you'd want in community. It's amazing to see the bonds that are established like within hours of people that are completely different, right? Just within our community, we hold that, which is really neat. And then we lean into questions of a teaching around wholeness, around the 4 shields of human nature that really kind of give us a map and a common language about this whole human experience thing and this welcome home thing. I really recommend a book by Stephen Foster called The 4 Shields of Human Nature. It changed my life because it gave me an actual conceptual framework for the enormity and the intersectionality of my being, and that the seasonal development of our lives is in accordance with the seasons of nature. So it's really cool teaching. That all grounds us into this new common language of wholeness, right? So we have that. We also have the deep holding of each other's stories and people getting to their I am. So this is the work of the first 4 days. And, how do I do a tarp? How do I survive out there with just water? How does that affect my body? We go through all of that. We hold all of that. It's all preparation for that big crossing of the line. And over those period of 4 days, you'll have spent some time out on the land and gone, you know what? I'm feeling that. That is the place, right? And we work with you. And it's we have to get to the heart for a second. When you see your brother or sister who you've had this new bond with take this very courageous step to cross the line and go out for 4 days by themselves, it is incredible just to honor that. So, and within those 4 days, you're out there with minimal shelter. And if people need a tent, you'll have a tent. The big thing about the deal is this is not SEER school. It's a place where
that's an important distinction.
It's the opposite. It's like all love, all compassion. And if it's a place where like a lot of our people that have never asked for help or said, I can't talk to this about with anybody. We're like, hey man, just come in and have a cup of tea. It's not a big deal. You know what I mean? And so like, because that is the tone and energy of it, right? There's no pressure, but like you will have your own internal drive and motivation to really cross the line into to who you truly are and to go do this thing. And yeah, if you're the kind of person that signed on the dotted line and to step out into the wilderness, knowing you were going to be changed as a service member, yeah, you got a little bit of crazy in you and adventurous that is also like, you know what? I'm going to go across the line and go into the wilderness within, but on my own orders. And it's, you know, it's an incredible experience. You know, the stories of what happens out there with just those invitations around wholeness and self-generated ceremony, you know, whether that's, you know, the Green Beret raising his brothers and sisters that, you know, are no longer standing, but raising them from the dead and actually having a eulogy, you know, those kind of moments or giving form to their traumas or having conversations with those they've lost. Also like being a kid again, right? Like reclaiming that childhood, because the thing around it is we don't really believe we can separate the military experience from the human experience going all the way back to childhood. And so for me, the greatest joy is mirroring these stories when people come back because they're so big and so cool. And there's all these synchronicities that just validate from nature and confirm what they have claimed. So those are those 4 days. And then coming back, sitting in circle again, and you're like camping again. And it's such a joyful experience because you've all been, it's like being through a different kind of deployment, but a deployment of the heart. And it's incredibly empowering and affirming that, you know, you are seen, you are heard, you are honored.
I'm always amazed when veterans, just from all walks of life, different eras, different, you name it, you get them together, and all of a sudden there's this camaraderie. It could be, you know, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and maybe even Coast Guard. We might include them this time. But you get them all together, and all of a sudden there's this whole relationship and these bonds, regardless of job series or ranks or whatever. So I can totally imagine this process. I can picture it as you're telling me. People come together, then they go off on their own, and then come back and share some of these amazing stories. So what are some of the stories? What are some of the outcomes of participating in the Veteran Rites passages?
I'll give the headlines, you know, because we really do honor the story. And we have some incredible stories on our blog. You know, I really want to, you know, speak to a Mitchell, you know, a brother that flew out from Hawaii who had actually literally died, you know, led sniper teams, you know, a warrior's warrior, you know, but then, you know, because of injury and all the other things, had to get out and really went through the whole living in the cave process, you know, losing it all, being homeless, being addicted by no fault of his own, but then really doing the work. And when he heard about the ceremony, he was on a plane 2 weeks later, just came out and did this thing because all the internal work and the healing that he'd done before, having that ceremonial container, he, you know, what he said before that where he crossed the line from where, you know, his wife was a caregiver to actually having a whole and present partner that shows up for himself and her and kids. These are the kind of stories, right? I have another sister, Felicia. You know, we've had quite a few women that have had the injustice of military sexual trauma and finding a space where they can actually trust being around men again, whole men that can actually hold and are empathetic. And, you know, that in itself is a journey. And seeing, you know, these women come out and claim, and first of all, share their story so it's heard and honored is insanely empowering. And that's the difference between what can happen in a therapeutic office and a ceremony is you're being affirmed by community. It's being held in a good way, you know, and felt in a good way. So Felicia, I love her to death because, you know, she came out, she, you know, admittedly, you know, was living a life, you know, very afraid for good reason with pepper spray, could not even be in her own home. And a few years later, after she crossed this line, like she just reports, you know, she's out being an adventurous wild woman that she claimed, you know, she would be, and having her own place and living the life that's actually worthy of her sacrifice. And other beautiful part, and I got to mention a Coast Guard veteran because, you had a few words there. Our first Veteran Rites female trained guide is a Coast Guard veteran named Jessica. She had not really ever even been camping, let alone come doing this crazy thing in the wilderness thing with other veterans. And, she ate it up and courageously stepped across the line. And, she's one of our leading guides now, and so these are the kind of stories of transformation. And usually they take time. That's the deal. People just want they want a pill. And we really honor that the whole healing journey takes time. But to cross that line and truly mark your new life, that is real. I had another brother, that came out. He has the Black Hawk Down stories and, there are multiple deployments. And some of the things that he did out there were all the things that were written in books that psychiatrists would prescribe you to do. But he just did them on his own, out of his own internal wisdom. And a few years later, he is happy and healthy and engaged and fully in life and in studies, and credits it all to having the ability to heal, the wounded child inside him. Not necessarily all the military service, but you can lay down those burdens. And what you can do in nature with that solitude, and this is, I think, an important distinction. We honor your anger. We honor your rage. We honor your grief. We honor your wildness. But we have a container that actually holds that in a healthy way. And there are some things you can do on your own. I perform I've turned a lot of big rocks into small rocks. I'll put it that way, right? Because you got to bottle up a lot, and that's okay. And you'd be amazed at the change inside of your own physiological system. Something as simple as breaking a stick, walking across the line, turning big rocks into small rocks, digging a hole and screaming into it, laying your back on the ground, digging a grave and laying on it as if it's the last day of your life, and coming into what's really important to me. So I can do what is today, because all we've got is today anyways. So our prayer is that through this experience, and almost without fail, it's true, you will have the feeling of being fully alive and fully yourself.
So it's not therapy, it's not counseling, it's really a almost a return to nature. Well, it's a rite, and it's got a lot of vices, to lack of a better word, to help you get in the right headspace. But it's not therapy. It's not psychiatry. It's not one of those things. You're getting back to yourself, a chance to almost revert back to reality with nature, communing with nature, and a number of practices that are sort of rolled up in there to help you do that.
That sounds pretty good. It's bringing you into coherence and alignment with your hearts. The farthest distance we'll ever travel is from that 8-pound bucket on the top of your neck down to your heart, and that's our practice, is really one, to get to the heart of our experience and all the rawness and the realness of it, and to hold that, and that it's okay. And in fact, we honor it. And that when we actually hold that, we can alchemize that and turn our madness into meaning, right? And our suffering into service. It's, and everyone is the greatest story ever told, man. That's how all of our people that are coming home should be. Their story should be held.
No, it sounds absolutely awesome. So, Ryan, I have another question. What are some of the challenges that you face both in completing your mission, but also as an organization?
Well, everything that happens out in the world gets presented in ceremony, whether that's when people have challenges with the tribalism in society, they have troubles with isolation, they have family troubles, they have troubles related to racism or injustice or bigotry, they have problems related to feeling protected in spaces and secure. All of the things that occur in the world, politics, may present themselves in ceremony. Well, what we say is, because we all just lean in and agree, and we have that shared veteran experience of the shared pain, sacrifice, and pride of service, a lot of that stuff just goes away, and but we have to hold it. It doesn't go away. It's a process. It's a letting go. You know, we really hold what our people are carrying so they can lay it down, because you can't step into who you truly are until you lay down those rocks in your rucksack that are weighing you down. And we walk a lot of miles with that weight on our backs without not wanting to look at the rocks. But it's amazing, as soon as you're given in a ceremonial context and the empowerment to do so, and the leaning into your own courage to do so, once you look at them, they become your friends. They become your gifts. And that's how we all are on the path of, our all final path is the path of peace. I haven't heard one veteran that just wants to be, really all I want is I just want some peace.
No, that is, I think, everyone's goal, finding that peace, finding that sense of belonging, whether it's external or intrinsic, doesn't matter how, but finding out who you are again and letting go of some of these traumas, these challenges, whatever's holding you back. Sounds like an absolutely amazing organization. So how do you guys fundraise? How do you guys get help? Because obviously this type of effort usually is quite involved, and I know how much time and effort and money goes into these things. So how do people donate? How do they do all that?
We're really trying to build a network of donors. We really see that our donors are the community. Their hands are in the circle on the backs of our people coming home. That's our relationship, right? We're very fortunate that we have a documentary by Academy Award nominated documentarian Frederick Marks. It's called Veterans Journey Home, Leaving It on the Land, by Warrior Films, as part of a 5-film series of non-medicated solutions for veteran healing, which is incredible. We also, had an initial study, getting back to that vetting of we didn't want to do anything that wouldn't have obviously real meaningful or positive impact or change. That study validated that. We have ongoing studies as well. And then we've had a couple of, civilian angels that came in, just to reference a John Crare, not just with resources, but with mentorship and friendship and wholeness. And through that, we started to, get one little grant at a time. And, over a few years, we've gotten to a place where we can provide to remove all the barriers so people can come out and have this experience from wherever they're at. So that's our deal. We have a donate page. We'll definitely have something going on for Giving Tuesday. And then it's through partnership as well. I really got to give a shout out to the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks rallied up 12 grassroots nonprofits to have them work together, to empower them, and also help them fundraise and give them exposure. It's called Task Force 12. In fact, we'll be there this upcoming weekend. So, through partnership, through spreading the word, but really, what it is? It's veterans telling their stories, man. Stories of inspiration and hope. There's so much a narrative out there that, we all know the numbers about suicide, and it's not getting any better. And why is that? Because we're not getting to the root of the problem, root and branch. And that's really our goal here, to really get to the depth of what our people carry and what they hold, and the wisdom and the talents and the magic, and to know that they are needed, that they have gifts that this world needs. So, and I also want to give a shout out. You don't have to be on Cliff's Edge to come out and do this thing, right? Every person that served would love this experience, because we've all got something. We all got a big question. And almost all of us are always asking, who am I? What's my purpose, and where do I belong? But then there's just the communal aspect. That's just the beauty of the ritual. So, and we would offer that even if you think you don't have something, there's something underneath that rug. So just the experience in itself.
And recognizing that everybody is different, and how things go, and all the different things that everybody's doing, and the fact that it's all scientific and being measured to make sure that everything is working well, and that it's getting maximal benefit, and that it works, and validating the ideas, which is really important, because a lot of people have some great ideas, but if you don't have evidence-based things to back it up, then it's really not a whole lot, because you never know, oh yeah, it worked, it was great, but you can't really prove it. So I think the fact that you are proving it is really awesome. We've talked about a lot of stuff today, but I'm sure there are things that I should have asked you about but didn't. What is it that I should have asked you?
Actually, I think, what I always say about our community is, there's a big thing around whether it's Sebastian Unger and Tribe and that whole initiative. Like, I really honor that we all as a community should get together and share our stories. So I would actually turn it back and I would ask you a question. And it's, if we can really get into circles and really share our stories in a way that's like not hyper pressured, and like where we normalize that our stories, that the medicine is in the stories, right? And so the question I would ask, well, how can you support this on the community side? And there's a lot of peer support groups, right? There's a lot of beautiful nonprofits out there fulfilling some deep need within our community. My prayer is that within every community in the United States and where all across the world, that there could be a circle where we could just come in and when we feel called to share our story and have it heard without it being judged, therapized, commented on, just heard. Because, there's a study done and it was Dr. Love, I think it's University of Washington, back in the 70s, something like that. And they talked about where is the healing? Like when you have confession or lean into peer support, and they sent a bunch of people out. They sent them to, the Boys and Girls Club. They sent them to VFWs. They sent them all over. Their neighbor, to the pastor, to the priest. And then the study concluded that it did not matter. The wellness and well-being was all in the witnessing. And that we do not need to carry this thing alone. And that's the power of gathering up as a community. So that's what we're trying to do in our own small little way and integrate with all the beautiful work that is out there. We're both and people, Therapy can be great. So, but at the core of it, you have your heart and you have your humanity. There was, 40 billion years before there was a VA system. And we've known how to take care of each other and our warriors coming home during that time, and we've lost the way. And here we are. And let's begin now. And I really believe through veterans doing the thing with civilians, with survivors of suicide loss, with Gold Star moms, and just with the community, we can really be the bridge, and one of the last respected, but most people can agree upon across political divides, racial divides, all the other kind of things, that if we can come together and again lead from the front, show the way on how to be real and whole with a whole lot of love and compassion and complete that journey of the wounded healer, then there's actually hope for this world and for the children.
Well, that is a fantastic sort of examination of everything and why and the how. I'm super impressed with Veteran Rites. We've been talking with Ryan Mielcarek. He is the executive director of the organization. Folks, if you know somebody or yourself or somebody that is sort of in your circle, go have them join Ryan's circle and get them involved. I think it's a definite opportunity to let all this baggage that is holding so many of us back, lighten that load, get those rocks out of the rucksack, get back on the right track with a very unique and very spiritual, though not religious, journey to get yourself right with the land again and right with yourself, which is the best and most important part, is that if you can't love yourself and get yourself going, you can't help anybody else either. And I've seen it a million times in the military. People will ignore their own issues, will go bending over backwards to help somebody else. This is an opportunity to help yourself and get where you need to be, which I think is so amazing. Ryan, I leave you with the last word, but thank you so much for joining us on Coming Home Well.
I'm nothing but grateful. And I'll just say to all the people out there, we know who you are in truth. We know how you serve in truth, and we love you. And welcome home.
Thanks for joining us this week on Coming Home Well with Dr. Tyler Pieron. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and a review. Follow us on Instagram at ComingHomeWell_BTS or on Twitter at ComingHomeWell. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well, This is Coming Home Well.